Here at RUSI, we speak to around 8,500 students who are in professional military education every year. 18 staff colleges around the world in everything from a single lecture to a 2-week long work package. And on themes as diverse as Great Pack Competition, the future of alliances, or hybrid warfare, active measures, the deep battle, or the reality of contemporary conflict. We have a special relationship with Ecole de Guerre. In Paris, the students don't have a deeply intensive laid out syllabus which they've got to crack through during that year. They do that work before they get to the college. And as a result, the year they spend in Paris, they look at topics which are designed to exercise their intellect, to extend their idea of concepts of doctrine, to change how they think about great problems. We've been privileged over the past 3 years to set them a series of challenges every year, and in conjunction with the English department there, the students spend their year looking at a selection of topics that we give them and deciding to write a dissertation, thesis on one of those topics. The topics we select aren't necessarily those that are around the big issues of the day. They're not even necessarily over the big issues over the next 2 to 3 years. But they are issues and challenges that we think need looking at. They're issues that might extend to 20 or 30 years out. They're conceptual and they're designed to stretch them intellectually, to bring something else to bear as they go into the next parts of their careers. Now, normally, at the culmination of their presentations, at the end of their academic year, the students present their findings and their paper to a panel who then challenge them, question them, and generally dig into some of the detail that sits behind it to really push them and challenge some of the debating skills. And again, they do this in English. What's even better is that we found that we have the support of both Vice Chiefs of Defence Staff from the UK and France who make their way to London to RUSI and join these sessions, each of which has been fascinating, challenging and insightful. This year, of course, that wasn't possible. It wasn't possible for the students to come to London to present or to bring people into a big room to do the challenge sessions. So we did it virtually. And we weren't able to bring a whole variety of others to come and view what they saw. So instead, we did it virtually. And the attached presentations that you can see in the following clips are the findings of the students and their papers. The students are really to be congratulated for what they have delivered. It's quite astounding not only that they've achieved this in a year, but in a second language and delivered a paper as well as a compelling and good presentation at the end of it. The whole range of topics that we gave them for the last year were everything from the reliance on logistics, proxies in space, the morphing of cyber and space challenges, contested theatre entry. But perhaps the two most interesting presentations that you'll see were on, firstly, the concept of parity in military terms, and secondly, the changing rules of warfare and what they mean for the future. The students of both of these presentations really excelled themselves, and we're really grateful to the support from Rob Johnson at CCW and numerous others who helped them through what is a difficult intellectual period for them. We really enjoyed working with them and hope you enjoy the presentations that follow. Thanks very much for watching. As Great Pack competition takes hold with military planners, many of the assumptions over the last 30 years are being overturned. Modern Western military planning assumptions have continually reduced the level of aspiration of military forces to conduct the most challenging tasks. Since 1996, one of the most challenging military scenarios, the requirement for contested or opposed theatre entry, has been deleted from the Be Prepared To list of Western military tasks, including for the US Marine Corps, for whom this role was their specific raison d'etre. By contrast, competitors, notably China, Russia, Korea and Iran, have retained this military requirement within their own military planning assumptions. Given the likely scenarios that might trigger Great Pack competition, all involve an adversary capturing key ground that allies would need to recover, it seems that contested and opposed theatre entry will once again be required. Yet the West shows no willingness to accept this fact. Are there ways in which modern warfare tools can circumvent the need for opposed theatre entry, or are Western militaries simply in denial? This is the background that we gave the students from Ecole de Guerre on a task that looked at the question of whether contested opposed theatre entry is back. It was a very good presentation. It was an excellent paper. I hope you enjoy it.
You've asked us to think about the ability of the West to conduct a first entry operation in an increasingly challenging A2AD context and with ever smaller military budgets. We focused on France, and indeed French doctrine states that air and sea superiority is mandatory for first entry operations. With smaller military budgets and the proliferation of ground-to-air weapon system, it was legitimate to question the consistency of this doctrine. As a first step, we tried to map out the threat facing France. In fact, we didn't find any clear and present state threat to the French homeland. However, France must defend its interests more broadly speaking. For example, with major oil and gas deposits, the scattered islands could become the scene of a Falklands War the French way. French defense strategy is also built around alliances, especially in Europe. And in Eastern Europe, most of the former Soviet republics are Russia's vital area of interest. Some of them are also NATO members, but the population is more than 25% Russian. So in fact, they are under pressure, and an armed conflict is far from unlikely. Moreover, the proliferation of ground-to-air system, with this proliferation, the A2AD threat is no longer exclusively used by states. For example, terrorist groups could get a few of some systems, and that would pose a serious threat to our air forces. In this context, we have noted that France has still some weaknesses, and NATO also. First, on the technological point of view, faced with the latest IADS, latest generation IADS, France has neither stealth aircraft nor anti-radar missile, nor offensive jamming on board its aircraft. Despite superiority in numbers and equipment, NATO has also some weaknesses. Logistically, the alliance lacks a little bit of everything it needs to conduct a rapid counteroffensive. Added to this are the heavy formalities for border crossing. We saw that especially during the COVID crisis. And the coalition itself is weak. Article 5 is not automatically triggered. So that means that if Russia were to invade the Baltic states, for instance, a decision by consensus would have to be taken, and it will last very long compared to Russian operation on the Crimean model. Moreover, in the West, our public opinion would probably not accept any more heavy casualties, and the political decision would be very hard to take. And finally, in France, the precautionary principle, which is enshrined in our constitution, has taken a key place in our leader seeking, and the fear of litigation has become a powerful brake on initiative. However, France and the West have developed responses to this fait accompli policy that Gautier will explain right now.
So then we noticed what the French responses were facing this return of the great powers competition. And facing these threats, the response is twofold. First thing is prevention of the fait accompli with the nuclear deterrence since 1972, and with the return of the conventional deterrence, which is a kind of answer to the return of the great power competition. So the best example is the NATO enhanced forward presence with the battalions in the Baltic states. The second answer is reaction to the fait accompli, and the main reaction is economic sanctions, and we can now assume that they are not effective. And the other reaction is to prepare for the future, to adapt the military programs, to develop new programs, to adapt our military to the threats. But these answers are not good answers to retake a key ground. How do we do if we have to retake a key ground seized by the enemy in a context with IADS, which is the real question of our study? So that we found three big families of answers. The first one is SEAD, so suppression of enemy air defense, either with missiles we don't have, or with maybe capacity of saturation of the IADS. So for example, UAV swarms, we don't have them neither, maybe in a few years or decades, but not tomorrow. The second one is horizontal escalation, and we think that, so it was, there was theories about that during the Cold War, but we think that it is not a good answer to any case we would face. So maybe for one case, for one commitment, maybe France could try horizontal escalation, but we don't think it is a good answer for any case. But the most realistic answer is the mutual air denial. It's to answer by the same way of the enemy defense. So they are denying our capability to use aircraft, air power, and missiles, helicopters. We will use land forces first, and then we will deny with our ground-to-air capacities, accompanying land forces, we will deny the air ability of the enemy to use the air space also. So that means to center the answer on the land forces, and that implies to create, to organize land forces differently, with a new kind of battalions, with the integration in the battalions, the land battalions of artillery, battle tanks, special forces or recce teams, with ISRs, UAVs, electric warfare, and so on. So this is the way of the way we think the simplest way we can answer the question of retaking a key ground defended by an IADS. So bubble against bubble. It's kind of. Also with this mutual air denial, we have to go back to quantity, because quality is fine, but quantity is very important in a massive commitment. So our stockpiles levels are not the stockpiles, ammunition stockpiles are not at a satisfactory level. And we do not have in France the critical mass of forces necessary to cushion attrition over time in this kind of commitment. So Oppo theater entry requires for France multiple efforts in the next years. First about doctrine, because we don't have any mutual denial doctrine. Our doctrine is based on acquiring as a prerequisite air and maritime superiority. But in this case, we cannot do that. So we have to implement this doctrine and to think about first getting land forces on the ground in the context of mutual air denial. Then I spoke about organization of new mixed regiments. We used to have it in France with the 21st Marine Infantry Marine Regiment with tanks, with artillery and infantry. So this could be a good example to follow. We have to prepare the human resources to high intensity conflicts, to prepare the combatants to fight in a highly technological and connected combat, but also to be able to switch to rescue mode because of the probable electronic warfare of the enemy against our connected systems. As regards equipment, obviously we have several capability efforts to do in parallel. SIAD, as it is planned to regain with the SCAF, IADS, also French IADS, to accompany the land forces. We have to increase the range of our artillery, etc. And as regards force support, we think about medicalization without helicopter. And today, medicalization is one main point of our CONOPS, and we always look at helicopters for evacuations. So how to deal with medicalization without helicopter. And also we have to be able to resupply our troops without with mobility, always mobility, because of the danger of the enemy ground-to-ground missiles. And then training. We always, in France, we train every 2 years, land forces with ground-to-air missiles. So this is not enough. We have to be used to work, to get land forces working with, fighting with ground-to-air defense. Thank you for your attention.